I think we underestimate the value of human connection. And I think this is the part that where I think a lot of the AI people get things wrong. Do I believe AI is going to replace jobs? 100%.
We know all real estate agents want to acquire clients consistently so that they can grow their business and income for that great lifestyle. This broadcast brings you the best and top people in the industry to support that quest. This is Dave Fanale, and I'm here to bring you the Real Estate Skill Builder broadcast, Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and Align, your premier real estate solution. Hey everybody, welcome back to Real Estate Talk TGIF episode 429. You know, for more than 8 years and 429 episodes, we've had conversations with some of the biggest names in real estate. Some built teams, some built companies. A few changed the way we think and thought about what we thought we knew about this real estate business. Today's guest belongs in that last category. James Dwiggins, never been interested in protecting the status quo. While others were defending yesterday's real estate, he was building tomorrow's. From pioneering transaction technology before most agents knew what digital signatures were, to co-founding one of the fastest growing and most respected franchise brands in America. James has consistently been a few steps ahead of where the industry was headed. He just didn't have opinions. He has conviction. Whether it's transparency, technology, private listings, AI, or the future of brokerages, James isn't afraid to challenge the biggest names in the business. He believes consumers and agents deserve better. Now, after NextHome's acquisition by EXP, he's entering that what may be the most influential chapter of his career. He's a technology pioneer, an entrepreneur, an industry reformer, and one of the most respected voices in real estate. Everybody welcome James Dwiggins, president of NextHome. Hey, man.
How are you? Thanks that was very kind of you. It was a long intro and I'm blushing. But I appreciate that very much.
Well, yeah, it's a little longer than usual, but I think it made the great point that I wanted to make of the type of person you are. And I did get, insight from you when we talked earlier in the week. And I know you had spoken to one of my colleagues, Jeff Bonk, a while back in New Orleans. And we had a conversation too. And just talking about real estate and the changes. I mean, background on me is I had my own brokerage for 21 years. And one of the things that I had a problem with in the early 2000s, probably 2000, 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, was that I really wanted to be that top person, that top company in technology. The problem is that my technology scared agents, and they didn't want to come and have to worry about the technology and that I was teaching them, because honestly, full transparency, I sucked at training it because I built it and I went too fast. I assumed they would catch on like
Sure.
I did, right? And it never happened. So, a lot of things happened over the years. So my brokerage, went into a little of an area where I wasn't really working too much on technology. Now I'm catching up, which I had a conversation with Brett Sikora about yesterday. But anyway, talk to me about how you started and how you got going. And I mean, you set up transaction management before anybody knew what it was, and digitally and all that stuff. Talk to me about your journey and how it got you to where you are today.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting story. So I'm third generation in the industry. So my grandfather opened up his real estate brokerage in 1967. I actually have a photo of it when he's out front with his sign up on his building. Both my grandparents were real estate brokers. Both my parents became real estate brokers. So I grew up in a real estate family. And I think that got me interested in the industry very early on. It's actually funny. I had somebody I was talking to that just came over to our company, and they were like, I remember when your mom worked with me at this company, and she's like, you were wearing a Halloween costume doing door knocking with your mom on Halloween day. And I don't remember this stuff, but it is once you kind of understand a real estate family, you get hooked. I share often that I remember the MLS books. I used to sit on them in my mom's car.
Yeah.
And knew my parents would go down to Multiple to get the new book every month. So I have a lot of history in the space. I got interested in technology when I started working at my parents' company when I was very young, and got involved in prop tech early on in the business. I started working for a company that was developing websites for real estate agents. This is back in 1999. We had to go way back. And then as I started work there, I got involved in another business with some venture funding. where we were going to take that, and we actually ironically built WordPress for real estate. We didn't build WordPress, but the version like of what WordPress is today, we did back in 2001, which was really, really advanced. It was a system with a database that would switch out templates, and it was early on software. And then I got involved in buying a company that was developing signature software for residential real estate, and it was built on a tablet PC. For those of you who've been around long enough, remember those machines that had a pen and you could like draw on the screen. This is before the iPad. And we had developed, it's kind of funny, we developed software. You'd load up the contract in a PDF format. You could pre-fill it out on your computer, and then the signature part would go up on a tablet, and you'd sit down in front of the customer and walk through the contract with them instead of on paper on the tablet, and then you'd have them sign. And it would be hooked into a PCM CIA slot air card. So think a cell phone, but hooked into the computer.
Right.
And it would store all that information, it would upload it in real time to what we now call the cloud. You'd log in and you'd have a copy of all of your files that were signed by the client. So we were very early on. This is before DocuSign even existed. And so our only problem in that venture was the machines were $3,000, and I love our industry, but it's somewhat cheap. And so, we ended up selling that business literally the year before the iPad came out. Like,
wow.
Just what machines went from $3,000 to $1,000, and we did well on it, but it just wasn't. It didn't end up being like the big, huge thing it could have been had we waited a little bit longer. But I've just been involved in the industry a very long time. And after that business, I went to work for a real estate franchise here in Northern California called Realty World. It had about 420 offices. I was the head of technology there. Eventually was promoted to vice president, ended up running the company for a while, and then ended up buying the business back in 2014. We purchased that, my business partner and I. And then we also started a national real estate brand at that time called NextHome, which launched in 2015. And 11 years later, it's become this big national real estate franchise. And so it's been quite a journey of, working in real estate, working for prop tech, and then working in franchising. I'm in a unique perspective that I've sat in most of the chairs. And so I can see things from technology, from consumer, from agent, from broker, and then from franchisor level. So that's the 10,000-foot view of my career. So all right. So we take everything and we take NextHome and EXP's acquisition of Same, and we're looking toward the future, right? I mean, we can talk about everything that's going on in the past and everything that's happened. I mean, there's a lot of evolution involved, and that's the only word. I don't think we use that word so far. We don't know a lot of things that are going to happen in a few years. I remember a number of years ago, probably year one of this broadcast or year two, I had Tom Ferry on, and I asked, this was in April, I believe, of the COVID year 2020. And I said, Tom, I mean, we have all these things happening. What's the next disruptor in our business? And he told me right then, and I should actually take this piece. He says, there's nothing on the horizon. There's nothing on the horizon that's going to disrupt our businesses the way Zillow did back 20 years earlier or whatever it was. Man, did that change really quickly over a year or two later as things went on. Where do you see you're now with the acquisition by EXP? How does that work for NextHome being more of a traditional type brokerage? How does that work? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that were interested in knowing that. Yeah. So first thing is we were acquired by EXP World Holdings, just for context. So the parent company of EXP Realty, right. We don't actually have really any affiliation with EXP Realty. Think of it as a separate division altogether within the company. I think that the thing to look at, and this is a conversation Leo, my boss now, who I love dearly, has, and I've been having for a while, and that is there is a lot of companies in the space with different business models, and EXP Realty obviously is still today the largest real estate brokerage in the United States. To be clear, brokerage, everybody heard my language on that. And it grew very, very quickly. And now obviously there's other sort of cloud companies that are competing in that space. I think that what people are recognizing, if you're paying attention, is that there isn't one model for everybody. It just doesn't going to work that way. Right. And anyone who thinks that is just being a little bit naive to the idea that people like choice, that people have different interests. They want their business to operate differently at different points in time. And so Leo and I have been chatting for a while. And I think that when we first started chatting about, first there's cultural alignment, and that's a big one that I think people get wrong with acquisitions. The leadership teams have to be very aligned on philosophy and where they want to take things. Leo and I have been on many stages together. We look at the industry very similarly. We talk about private listings not being good for consumers. We've been very simpatico, and that alignment was the first step for us to go, okay, there's definitely something here. And then look, the massive consolidation going on in the space today that everyone's aware of. You've got obviously Compass acquiring Anywhere. You've got Rocket buying Redfin. You've got Real buying Remax. I mean, the list goes on and on. Obviously, eXp World Holdings acquiring, NextHome, now called AGNT. There's a lot of movement in the space. That catalyst, candidly, is the Compass acquisition. It's very clear they have an initiative to sort of shift the industry in a way that certainly benefits their business. And you're seeing industries move, and you're seeing companies react to that movement. If we end up in a world where companies no longer want to share listing inventory, which unfortunately is the direction that this is somewhat headed, then size matters. Size of the organization matters a lot. And back in September, when that acquisition was announced, I sat down with Leo and I was like, look, I'm not naive to the fact I have a beautiful company. I've built this great business. My team have worked very hard for that. We've dedicated 10 years of our life to building this great organization. It makes good money. We're profitable. Like we run a good business, but I also know we're too small. In a world where listing inventory gets hoarded, and we go back to the way it was 40 years ago, that respectfully, most of my colleagues that are running some of these large companies haven't been around long enough to know, then it ends up being 4 or 5 companies that control most of the market. And I have a fiduciary responsibility to my shareholders, which is my people, my members, my franchisees, my agents, to make sure they're in a spot. And so, cash matters. In that world, size matters, listing inventory matters, all of those things matter, and it made logical sense. Secondarily, eXp World Holdings, it owns a lot of businesses. Most people actually don't even know that. They don't just own eXp Realty, they own multiple businesses. And being the most well-capitalized company in the space, they have no debt. They have almost 120 million in cash. Like, it is a very, very well-run business that has a lot of liquidity. That is a good position to be in, especially with where we are today. A lot of these acquisitions that have occurred have created massive risk and massive debt loads on these businesses. So for us, we're sitting here going, all right, here's an organization that's growing. And if you think about like Keller Williams, Leo uses this all the time. I love this analogy. Keller Williams grew to be, arguably the biggest company for a single brand in the market. And at their peak, they were 14 to 16% of the market at most. Yeah. So, and that took them 25, 30 years to get there. So even if eXp could get to that, that's still going to be, let's call it 10% of the market. That means there's 90% of the industry that isn't going to work at this organization. And that was a conversation we had. And that is simply, okay, let's pretend that eXp gets to, or we will eventually, but gets to 120,000 people. Well, then there's still 90% of the market that's not being touched, that want to do things differently. And that was the evolution of this multi-model piece. 2 chassis for someone that doesn't want to be an agent at a brokerage or just be part of that structure. They want to own their own business. Now there's the NextHome model. And if they don't want to run the business and deal with E&O and all of that stuff, there's the eXp model. And that, a lot of people have made the comment that it was reactionary to the Real Remax. And if people are listening, I'm like, we've been talking about this for a long time. Deals with publicly traded companies take a long period of time to work through. This multi-model conversation has been happening, obviously, for well past a year. So,
yeah, I mean, that I know and that I realize. And one of the things that you mentioned, and I mean, I just want to accentuate a little bit, is Real to Remax. A lot of debt, a lot of debt. The founders, we're getting older, and they found their exit, right, which is great, good for them. They did a great job, and they built a great company. Compass with Anywhere. I get kind of confused sometimes because I was a Century 21 franchisee in the beginning as PHH, then it was Sendent, then it was Realogy. And then as I was getting out, it turned into Anywhere. I didn't understand, but okay, fine. I do, but I'm just being facetious there a little bit. But that's an awful lot of debt as well.
Yeah, it is. But look, I'm not shy about the fact that Mr. Refkin and I have very serious differences of opinion on how the industry should operate. And look, I have to give respect where it's deserved. He's running a business that is beating his earnings reports. And in the publicly traded world, that's what you're looking for. So like, he has a lot of debt. There's no argument to that. But the past 2 quarters, they've done really well. And so like, there is that. I think that there's going to be some struggles with some of these other ones because you've got a business that has been around a long time. You've got legacy brands merging with really fresh brands. I think that's an interesting combination. But look, I also know the leadership. I'm fortunate in that I run an industry podcast as well. And so I've interviewed almost every single executive in this industry. There's smart leaders all over the place. We are in a market, and this is important, we all, every single one of us, are in 4 years of a contracted real estate market and not getting any better because candidly, our foreign policy and domestic policy in the US is, I think, garbage. I think there's a lot of stuff that if we were doing differently, this market would be booming. Like we would be just off to the races. And my comment to that is when that occurs eventually, I think you're going to see rising tides lift all boats. So it's a fair comment. There's a lot of debt. There's a lot of industry, there's a lot of things to look at. And when the market turns, Wall Street will have less concern about that.
So let's talk about other brokerages, legacy brokerages included. I know there's a place for everything, right? There's so many different brands out there. Some are similar to EXP, some are not. Some have a lot of different lineages and stuff. But how does that brokerage let's call them 100% brokerages that where I lost a lot of agents to over the years because they were paying quote unquote 100%. Are they able to really compete and survive in the future?
Well, look, there's no secret that we're in the industry for a while has been sort of what I call a race to the bottom. And I'm not ragging on anybody who's doing that. I'm just, if everyone's just competing on price, there's always going to be someone cheaper. Right. I would also argue that if agents are only looking at that, then that's a problem in itself. And it's a 2-pronged approach, both brokers not providing enough value proposition and agents are like, what am I paying for? Fair argument. And also if all you care about is price, then you're going to get crap in return. So I think that this is such a deeper conversation. I think that those are all things that are threats to the space. I don't even know what 100% means, by the way, because it's like the argument, you're paying a fee to be part of a company. It's not 100%. It's not like it's a free profit. There are different business models that provide more or less value. And I think people are willing to pay for value. I think a good portion of the industry does so little amount of business that it ends up being something where you get a lot of agents that are just looking for the cheapest shop. That's an argument worth having on whether we should have a lot of those people in the industry or not. And certainly that's been a conversation a long time about how do we raise the professional standards in this business. I am not shy about the fact we should get rid of half the amount of realtors in the industry and the industry would have a better reputation. It would have less problems, but that requires everyone to shift their business models and be comfortable with it. I think we're headed there anyway. My belief is AI is going to push a lot of this. And to directly answer your question, margin pressure is going to increase. AI and business model shifts and the cost of housing and all of these things are going to domino into consumers questioning whether they want to spend as much money as the industry charges. I think you're going to see that. I think you're seeing that now. I think if we saw the numbers of realtor membership, I think you will see it is dropping. Most of the MLS executives I talk to across the US are saying their membership is dropping. Every company is noticing it. The big companies are getting a little bit bigger because of the listings war, but I think you're finding independents are going to struggle. That's not meant to be that there isn't a room and space for independents. I'm talking about that like 40% that have 2 to 5 agents. That market is in trouble in the future, 100%. And as that consolidation continues, I think this industry will consolidate. I think margin pressure will be there. And I think you're going to see a race to ancillary services to make up that difference.
Okay. So when we look at, the business itself, the real estate business, we have AI, we have all different kinds of technology. And for a lot of people that really use AI and use workflows, et cetera, it makes a lot of sense. We also see a lot more agents using this technology, but there's also a lot of agents not using technology.
Yeah.
And AI, for some, I believe AI is this. They think it's this magic pill because they're asking it questions. But when you look at what can be done with it, is this going to leave agents behind?
Yes, 100%. I'll give you some examples.
Yes, please.
I think we underestimate the value of human connection. And I think this is the part that where I think a lot of the AI people get things wrong. Do I believe AI is going to replace jobs? 100%. You are going to see significant job loss in the economy. Do I think it replaces jobs where people are emotional and an infrequent transaction with high value that they want to AI that experience? No. Do I think they will augment human connection and AI in an experience like that? Yes. If you think about what the average realtor does, this is why I get so worked up about this. It's like, we need to protect our data. Screw your data. Like, I understand data is oil. I get it. But our value proposition is not your freaking listing data. It never has been that information. Right. It is you. It is what you do. It is answering the question at 10 p.m. when your seller's losing their ever-loving mind and you got to play therapist for 2 hours, by the way, which you never get paid for unless a deal closes. It's the 17,000 conversations. It's the driving. It's the inspect. It's all that shit. And it's like, it drives me absolutely bonkers when we're like, it's my data. Screw your data. It's not even your data. It's the seller's data, by the way. You're a beneficiary of that information. What you do is your job. That is the part that I want people to think about. It's like, look, AI is going to be an important part of our future. This is like, oh, sorry, you got me on a soapbox. It's why I hate this conversation about like this stupid conversation. And by the way, it is stupid to be clear, of like holding information back. Well, my seller doesn't want to show days on market and price history. Bullshit. You're talking to them about that. They're not having that conversation because, by the way, your seller 70% of the time is a buyer who wants that information. Like, let's have an honest conversation. That data is going to be accessible by AI search. You think you can hide it? Like, you're not going to hide that information. Claude and ChatGPT will find all of that information because you posted something somewhere. You listed it on a social media post. Like, this industry's got to grow up. Our value is us. Like, what we do, that emotional support, that help, that experience. Because, by the way, buyers and sellers do this 2 to 3 times in their life. Is AI going to be part of it? Absolutely. And an agent that is using that extensively is going to be far more empowered than someone who's not. If I can't find you in AI search, if I can't find you the way I want or get information on you or get the information I'm looking for, that's a problem. I think agents who are using AI around the experience they provide and being transparent with that data are going to be immensely powerful and have way more market share than people that do not. And as I said before, as the price of things go up, like, this is where consumers are going to get more choosy. So I did this example. I was on a meeting. I shouldn't say this, but whatever. I'm on a meeting. I'm like 2 hours into it, Dave. And I'm so annoyed because I'm just like, I don't want to be on this call. So I literally said, Claude, I want you to go through my intranet and I want you to write an entire new operating manual for my company. I want you to watch every video, read every PDF, and I want you to outline what you think a new operating manual would be for a franchise owner and then support it back. By the way, in 35 minutes, it had done the entire thing to a degree. It would have taken my marketing team 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, easy to do. That is an eye opener. Like when I say that this thing is getting smarter and we're getting closer to a singularity event, we are. But again, how you use it's going to be important. And I think if you take that analogy and have agents think about that differently, those agents are going to do some incredible work.
So I want to go back to the data thing it's my data, yada yada yada. I want everyone to understand that the data has that ship sailed. By the way, it sailed a very long time ago when this company called Zillow came in. And I'm just going to give you a quick example. I was on board of directors of the local MLS, and there was a big fight every board of directors meeting about, should we give our information to realtor.com? Okay, they're going to pay us for our information. Great, right? That lasted a couple of years. And then Zillow, should we give the information to Zillow? Nobody wanted to give their information to Zillow. But guess what? They got it anyway. You know, how they got it, I don't care. But our data was supposedly sacred to this MLS that I was on the board of directors of. It was so sacred that, you know what, they're actually giving more away than they ever did before. So it's going to happen more and more as we see it, because the data is important, but you're right. It's not my data. It's the seller's data.
But Dave, like, here's the thing. I literally have to ask this question. I do this all the time when I talk to MLS groups. If the entire conversation is about protecting the data, then what is our value proposition? I genuinely, it's a fair question. Like, if that's the whole conversation, not how we can increase our value proposition with it, not how we can provide more value to buyers and sellers, not how we can take that data and mix it with new data to create new search experiences. Or how about this one? Everyone freaked out when Zillow launched the app on OpenAI with chat. Like, oh my God, Zillow's taking our MLS data and throwing it in there. I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. I know you're all pissed and I understand why. But how about maybe we should have thought of that 24 months ago? Maybe as an industry, we shouldn't have 500 and freaking MLSs, which is just stupid, and actually put a joint data feed together and work with OpenAI and Anthropic and Google to create a search where, by the way, we are the source of truth. I don't know. Maybe that's like an idea worth pondering, instead of being like, oh my God, what did they do? Screw Zillow. Well, you know what? Good on them for innovating. Do I like it? No, I don't want Zillow doing that. But at least they're thinking like how to create new experiences for the consumer. Because, by the way, where is the consumer today? They're on Claude, they're on ChatGPT, they're on Gemini. Like, it's so stupid to me that we're having these conversations on MLS boards where they're mind-numbing to me. Like, oh my God, we got to protect our data. Seriously, like, we need to be thinking about how to increase the value proposition of the realtor in this process. And we're not having those conversations. So
was it wrong for me to walk off that board?
No, I'm just trying to make a point that if our value proposition is about protecting data, then we're already screwed.
Yeah, that's my point. That's exactly my point. It was always going to happen. It happened. And if anybody thinks they're going to worry about it today, hey, you know what? You can't close the barn door after all the animals have left.
Level up. Level up. The data's out there. Work on your value proposition so that you don't, that's not part of it. By the way, the entire buying process, 5% of it, as everyone knows, it's the search. The other 95% is once they find the damn house. That's where your job begins. Focus on that.
Yeah. So when we were talking about after the data thing, we were talking about, basically, we're looking at almost a consolidation of the industry as we're getting less agents. Are we looking at the survival of the fittest when it comes to teams and brokerages, or is it just those are the smart ones running a smart business where they're growing? I mean, I look at Align, which is the team I'm with, number one in the world in units in production now with EXP. I think they were number 18 3 or 4 years ago. So, I mean, and it's just slow but sure of building a culture, building a value proposition for the agents. Is that something we're going to continue to see teams like Align and other ones out in California that are growing really well, like with Dan and Kyle out there?
Yes. And so, yes. And I think that here's the part that everyone doesn't talk about. So teams or teamerages are going to get bigger. Absolutely. I think that is certainly the future of the industry to a degree. I think solo agents will struggle more in that environment because teams can offer more efficiency, more support, more streamlined operations. They just theoretically, I'm not saying this applies to everybody, I'm broad brushstroking here. They could typically provide a better consumer experience because there's just more processes and people and systems in place. That being said, the part that I think everyone misses is running a brokerage is also very difficult. So like I'll have a lot of people going, a lot of these teams are going to go out on their own and run their own brokerage. And I'll tell you why. So what everybody didn't do, and I'm going to back into this comment. So what everybody didn't get to experience was the past 2 years being sued into oblivion, which I got the great benefit of experiencing. Agents, to some degree, I wish they were actually part of it. So they had a little more appreciation for what real estate companies went through. I wish agents actually had some skin in the game through the litigation. Because all the brokerages and all the big ones, EXP, NextHome, we all got sued into oblivion. And I spent millions of dollars on legal fees and settlements, etc. By the way, E&O insurance, yeah, they don't offer riders anymore for class action coverage. So E&O policies don't have that in them anymore. And what happened was agents, rightfully so and wrongfully, blamed NAR. Absolutely, NAR was certainly part of the reason we got into this mess. NAR also settled nationally for everyone, and agents didn't have to pay a dime. Had they paid a dime, they would have actually had a little bit more understanding of what was going on. And certainly the brokerage companies like EXP, like NextHome, like all of us who are above basically the $1 billion club, ended up paying another $1 billion to the lawyers, because that's who got all the money for this litigation. So one of the comments I'm going to state is, I think you're going to see bigger companies get bigger. I think larger teams that think about going on their own are going to realize that it takes one lawsuit, just one. And the whole concept of, I don't want to pay my broker any money anymore because I want to save that money and run my own business becomes a real problem. Because let me explain to you how this works. And as somebody who, and I'm not shy about this, I can share it. There's no litigation where anyone wins except the lawyers. The end. So what will happen is somebody will get sued, right or wrong. And Burnett Citra is a great example of the system's rigged. The industry wasn't some massive collusion, despite what everybody says. And you get sued, and you will spend $50,000 to $100,000 a month in legal fees per month to defend said litigation. And the lawyers know this, by the way, because they can charge whatever the hell they want because the system's rigged that way. And by the way, then what happens is you get to a point where you're going, oh my God, this is bleeding me dry. So what do? You sit down and go, we need to settle. And then that settlement occurs, which the lawyers get in class action, around a third of that. And what happens is all these teams, they're looking at, they've got $1 million or $2 million in the bank. Well, that $1 million and $2 million just went bye-bye.
Right.
So I think the world looks like teams, but I think it's teams under a larger umbrella, because the security and the benefit of having that E&O insurance or that legal coverage or that sort of protection becomes more valuable. And all it takes is one lawsuit and everybody learns really fast. Until that's changed, I think teams will get bigger, but I think big companies get bigger too.
I think one of the most important things that I look at when I look at Align and I look at Whistle Beer and I look at all that, right?
Yeah.
It's the leverage that we're able to use.
Very much.
Right. That's really what all it is.
It's just like the airlines, Dave. Look at the airlines. There were 20, 30 of them a long time ago, and there's what? Yep. 5. That's basically covers most of everything, minus regional carriers, because it's consolidation. It's size, it's cost, it's maneuvering. Like there's
Yeah,
use cases that will follow this.
that's what Continental did, and they were eaten by United, and here
And
it is. I
American
mean,
and US Airways, and like you can go
yep,
down that list of companies.
yeah,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So as we move forward, who's let's talk about, we talked about agents and we talked about brokers. Let's talk about the consumer, because that's the one, that's the group that really needs to win better than we do. And because and everybody's talking about, private listings and all that kind of shit. But let's talk about, what do we need to do for the consumer now as we move forward into more AI and all this other stuff. Because let's face it, you have an educated consumer. Remember, I remember this. Cy Sims was, the educated consumer is our best customer, right? That was a clothing store. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it was out here in Jersey. But the point I'm making is, our consumers are more educated today. That I'm going to make a statement that people may get pissed at, is that I think a lot of consumers know more than a lot of realtors. Would you agree with that?
I think that they, in some cases, do, especially the agents that are part-time. I think the full-time agents know, but I think consumers think they know more than the agent does.
Oh, it's always been a point.
And it doesn't mean that there aren't some very highly educated people on real estate. And look, with the advent of AI, and it is getting very intelligent. Like I just watched a program the other day that's creating an end-to-end experience that walks the agent through the entire process. I'm sorry, the consumer through the entire process without an agent. And look, it's getting good. Do I think there's a world where that exists completely? Yes, they do. There are people that buy homes today and sell homes today without a realtor. Do I think that will increase? Yes. Do I think that it's a majority of the market? No. I think it's an infrequent, scary transaction. It's emotional. But if agents don't level up, to your point, consumers may walk in the door with far more information than they have. And then then I don't know how you ask a consumer to pay you a fee, whatever that might be, if the consumer feels that they know more about the business than you do. I don't see how anybody would do that. Yeah.
So basically, if I heard you correctly, you said that it is possible to have real estate transactions in the future without agents at all.
They're doing it currently today. There's a company that's in Florida and South Carolina that's built a system where AI walks you through the journey. There's an agent that's on staff to help answer questions as they come up, but the journey can be done through AI and the consumer. And they're basically having an agent paid either by the hour or a small fee. I think that is a use case for specific people. But Dave, let me before everybody freaks out, I think it's important to keep a couple of things in mind. So I'm a stats guy, and I do a lot of keynotes, so I like having data to back me up on this. So in 1960, dual income households in the United States was 30%. So 30% of the time in the 1960s, mom and dad were both working. Okay. And for anybody to misinterpret, I'm not saying we should go back to that, by the way. What I'm trying to explain is today it's 60%. Mom and dad, 60% of the time, both have to have jobs in order to make a living in this country and to be able to afford how expensive things are in this country. Okay. As a father who has a wife who has a career as well, when I get up in the morning, I'm like, it's cray cray around here, right? We're trying to get the kids to school. We're trying all this stuff, right? I don't think most consumers wake up and go, I want to buy a house on my own, or I want to sell my house on my own because it's another freaking thing I got to deal with. That is not how that works. It is depending upon the financial position of the individual. They usually, and by the way, most consumers usually want to outsource that. They're simply going to go, this is what I can spend, and I want to find the value for the money that I'm spending. So I believe very strongly that most people want to outsource this thing because it's infrequent, scary, big, all of those pieces. Just for context. Do I believe investors or well-experienced home buyers or well-experienced home sellers who've done this multiple times or are comfortable with the process will look for a cheaper alternative and use AI to help in that process in the future? 100%. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think that will grow. Yeah.
Okay. So we have to value the consumer. We have to build our value proposition. But one of the things we've been hearing this word value. it really wasn't something that we talked an awful lot about 20 years ago. We knew we had to bring it. We knew we had to have it. We knew we had to be impressive. And now we hear everything is all about the value you bring, and you need to show value. Okay. So that all being said, being an agent today, what is the most important thing that they need to know and or need to learn in order to succeed in a business where, you know, they want to be able to have an income of, you know, let's say that magic number that used to be $100,000 to $250,000. What's the necessity for help that agent to grow?
Yeah, well, it's really a couple of things. So I'll start with this. Number one is, I believe you need to educate yourself extensively. Like, you need to feel confident that when you walk into a room, you know more about that market and the industry than the consumer does. And if they start asking you questions, you feel confident you can answer all of that. If you don't feel confident in a listing presentation or a buyer consult that you are the expert in the room, then go educate yourself. Like, go, my God, there's a million ways to do it. Conferences, online, you probably work for a brokerage that has incredible training. Go get a mentorship, but get to the point where you feel confident, like I am talking about these industry subjects. Like, I know, not to be arrogant, but I know more than most people about these subjects. They've been doing this a long time. Get there first. Build that confidence up. And if you can't do that on your own, then go work for a team where they can help mentor you in that process. I actually think we should go back to doing that, where a new agent comes in, that they're required to be mentored. Like, your first 4 deals are done underneath the top producer to learn the ropes of the business. Because we all know this, the real estate license you get and what they teach you to get your license isn't even relevant most of the time for what happens in real estate. So I think that's the first step. The second step is, this is not a complicated business. I've interviewed in the past 12 months, 50 of the top 100 agents on my podcast. And the most common thing I hear when I ask them, where do you get your business from? What do you think it is, Dave? Where do they get their business from?
Their sphere.
Sphere of influence is like the number one thing I hear every single time, is that my sphere of influence accounts for roughly 40% of my business. I work my network. I know who my top 50 people are that refer business to me. I have a process and plan in place to mentor and nurture those relationships. I'm constantly in contact with them. I'm not asking them for business. I'm a resource to them. I'm there in their life. I'm top of mind. I treat those networks and those relationships as gold, so that they're constantly feeding my business. By the way, if you get 40% of your business from referral, are you having to pay out those referral from your clients? Are you having to pay out 40% referral fees to Zillow? No. Like, this is not complicated. We make this so complicated. If we just focused our time on our sphere, talking to our past clients, talking to our friends and family, being able and being comfortable, hearing people say no. By the way, that's how this works. Like, it is not an easy job. It is once you get used to it and like you understand how it operates. But first thing is getting the confidence. Second thing, getting in touch with your client base, your past clients, your sphere of influence, and working that religiously. That will create a stream of income for you, where you keep a lot more of your money. And the third thing is, we do have to, Dave, show our value. Showing our value is very different than what I think people understand. So I've been involved in a venture for a long time now called Raise, R-A-Y-S-E. It is a product that has been built to actually track what an agent is doing and show the experience in real time to the buyer and seller. So think like DoorDash for the agent. What I mean by that is, every single aspect of what an agent is doing, the consumer can see the amount of work. Because, Dave, here's an important number. 46% of home buyers today believe an agent spends less than 15 hours helping them buy a house. I'm going to let you sit on that for a second. 46% of buyers think an agent spends less than 15 hours to help them buy a house, which anybody who's listening to this is just like, oh my God, I spend so much time like working with buyers. Exactly. And do you know why they think that? Because they have no idea what you're doing. They literally don't know. They all they do is they see you at the showing for 20 minutes. They forgot about the phone calls with the listing agent ahead of time. They forgot about the disclosure package that you had to read through for 2 hours to make sure you understood everything in there before you sent the email. They forgot about driving there and back. They forgot about the phone calls, or maybe you met with the inspector ahead. Like, all that stuff that the buyer doesn't see is work you're doing that you know is important, that's adding up time, because time is money, but the buyer just sees the 20 minutes. If we don't get very transparent with our work, they're going to look at an AI model that's going to charge $1,500 to help them buy a house and go, well, that's the same as Dave.
So what do we tell them? We tell them what we're doing?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's no reason why when we start a conversation, we can't say, okay, this is what we've been working on, and go through it and just iterate what it was. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, is there?
That app I just told you about does all that automatically. And the point I wanted to make next is the average agent will spend 87 hours working with a buyer, not 15. You know why I know that? Because the system tracks that. So when an agent's sitting down with a buyer and they're like, well, will you do it for X? No. By the way, I spend 87 hours helping you buy a house, which, by the way, I only get paid on if you actually buy a freaking house, to be clear. Number two is I'm an independent contractor, so I got to strip out all of my expenses. I got to pay my own health insurance. I got to pay my own Social Security. Like, I'm not an employee. I don't get the benefit of employer contribution. Like, when you start going down that, the agent's going to go, without being offended, and be like, no, I'm kind of offended, but I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to explain to you what my value is so that we have confidence in asking for that. By the way, when you show a buyer or seller this information, they go, I had no idea you were doing that much work. I know, which is my point. Like, there's nothing wrong with showing a consumer the amount of work that's involved in a real estate transaction. And to make my final comment, we only get paid a contingency fee most of the time. If they buy a house, you get paid. If the house sells, you get paid. So,
absolutely. I mean, that's the way I've always looked at it, right? And you said something just a minute ago, which you listen to different coaches through the years, and there's some things that stand out. Floyd Wickman, great coach over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember seeing Floyd a lot. One of the things he talked about, the question of, will you lower your commission? And he did a role play. And somebody says, well, ask me that question. He goes, well, will you lower your commission? He goes, no. And then I giggle a little bit. That was how Floyd thought that.
I agree with that. But let me ask you, this is another way to think about it. I mean, I don't know. I'm going to say this anyway. To some degree, if they ask you to lower your commission at the end of the presentation, then I think you need to redo your presentation.
Hell yeah.
So, like, I would feel confident in you getting to know me. I would not be asked to lower my commission because I'm so confident in the way I would present myself, understanding the market, the complexities of a real estate transaction, how to negotiate, and we get something wrong, you might lose the house that you've been really wanting. The amount of time that I'm going to spend doing this, the accountability to make sure you know what I'm doing and what you're paying for. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that. If I'm doing that correctly, you'd feel like an asshole asking me to discount my commission.
That is correct. That is correct.
Because it'd be like this. If you go to the Ritz-Carlton, and I've been fortunate enough in my life to be able to do that, it would be weird to ask the Ritz-Carlton to charge the same rates as the Marriott. Because the experience is different. Everything is different at the Ritz-Carlton. The way that people greet you, the way they hand you the key to your room, everything is orchestrated, and you know it's a premium experience, and you're going there because it's a premium experience. To ask the person if they can give you a discount on your room when you check in would be kind of weird and insulting because they'd be like, what? You wouldn't do it. The point is, if somebody's asking you that, then I would tell you, think internally and go, okay. And look, I get the fact there's going to be some of those buyers and sellers that they're just going to ask because it's who they are. I get that. I'm not talking about all, I'm generalizing. If that question comes up a lot, then you got a you problem. Then you aren't doing your job correctly on articulating your value clearly. And you should work on that so that you're getting less of those questions at the end. That's how I would approach that.
So I just got a couple more things. And one of the things I do want to hit is you said for agents that they need to get confidence, right? With what they're saying, how they're saying it, their presentations, the whole thing. What's the switch? What's the magic pill for that matter to how they get the confidence? Is it reps? Is it making calls? Is it talking to as many people as possible? Is it just doing it? That's it?
It's all of that. It's also like I would spend time, and this is what I think makes me confident in what I say. I spend a lot of time listening to the consumer as well. And our industry sucks at this. Like we are atrocious at it. Like I could sit in a room and doing a keynote with 1,000 people. And I do this often. I'll ask the room, raise your hand if you have a third-party survey that is sent out to your customer at the end of the transaction, asking them anonymously to provide feedback, like a process so that they can feel confident to tell you truthfully the experience that they had with you. Yeah. What percentage of people do you think in the room raise their hand for that? Like less than 10%. We only get better when we hear about the things that we're not doing right. That's part of the process, the things that we can do better. It's not good to hear all the things that you do well. I mean, it is like it's a good psychology booster. But if you're not asking the questions about what things you didn't do right that you can fix to make that experience better, then you're only sort of in a vacuum. You're just hearing the same thing over and over again. So I think one of the most important things you could do is spend time studying what consumers complain about our industry, what they didn't like about their agent, what they didn't like about the transaction. And don't defend the industry. Don't be like, it's a stupid seller, a stupid buyer. No, that means somewhere along the line, we didn't do the best job of explaining it. And again, just for context, I realize there's crazy buyers and sellers. I understand that. And that sometimes those people, we're always going to have them. Talking as a whole, I think we have to spend so much more time. I'll give you an example. I said this to Nikia, and don't get me wrong, I love Nikia and I'm supportive of her. The NAR strategic plan has a massive hole in it. You know what it is? It has this great study they did asking agents what they want from their association and all of this stuff. And the question I asked in the room when I first got to see it, I said, where is the buyer and seller? Where's the buyer and seller in this survey? I'm glad that we asked our industry what we want. I don't give a shit what our industry wants. I want to hear from the customer we serve what they want so that we can back into helping our industry become the people that the buyer and seller wants. Because if we get that wrong, there is no industry. We have to go one layer further. So the more that we can take that information in, we have no worry about our future if we just make the buyer and seller the North Star.
Well, the buyer and seller, the consumer, should be the center of everything we do. But as far as what we've just talked about, what you just said was it's not when it comes to our associations, correct?
No, and it's why I get so worked up about this private listing conversation, which I hate talking about, is there aren't sellers. This is not a thing. It is a made up thing where sellers are like, I hate Zillow. I don't want to be on Zillow. I don't want to be on the MLS. No, that ain't happening, by the way. That is an industry made up talking point for our own interests. My company did 30,000 transactions last year. And my agents reach out to me for everything that goes wrong. Do you know how many times I had one of my agents across 575 locations, we are in almost every market in the United States, tell me that their sellers are complaining that their listings are on Zillow? You know how many times I got that last year from my agents?
None.
0. Seller choice, completely made up bullshit. That isn't even a thing. Sellers have choice. By the way, starting with they can use a realtor or not. They can do a non-exclusive listing agreement, which we don't offer if we don't like MLS rules. Every MLS allows a non-exclusive listing agreement. You can market the home any way you want. It is so frustrating to me that what's going to happen, Dave, is sellers, they trust us. They're hiring us because they trust us. I read it. This is one that's like super important. I read a post today. Seller listed with an agent at an organization here in Northern California. Property is listed off market. Same agent that representing the seller represents the buyer. You know where this is going, Dave?
Mm-hmm.
Property is not on the MLS. Buyer's making a bunch of demands. She's conflicted because I'm in a dual agent situation, which I hate, by the way. I'm not shy about it. I think it should be abolished because you are biased. You cannot represent both clients without bias. That's why lawyers can't do it. So where does it end up? She starts asking some other agents about what the property's worth. She's got multiple people, not just one, but multiple brokers going, yeah, that property on the open market would be worth about 1.3 million, not the 1 million that you're in contract for. See where this is going, Dave? And here we are. And by the way, this is a growing trend. And the seller didn't know because they signed the paperwork in DocuSign. They didn't read it.
Right. It was just sent over to them. Here, sign this.
And this is, by the way, where our industry is going. We are literally going to put ourselves out of business because they trust us. They trust we're telling them the truth. There are unfortunately people who are not putting the consumer first in that process. And here we are. So like, I believe transparency is the most important thing possible. It's literally what brings light to these situations so that they don't happen. And the concept of less information is the wrong direction. More information, more light, more transparency. Open market is what keeps everybody accountable and make sure that the consumer can find what they're looking for. They can trust us. We get that right, and we're here in the future. We get this wrong,
we're gone. Well, man, we're up on time. I want to thank you so much for being on today. I do have a couple of quick things. I forgot to ask you probably the most important question of this conversation today, which I always do at the beginning and I forgot. It's called Real Estate Talk TGIF. What does TGIF stand for?
Thank God it's Friday.
You're very close. Don't feel
Just for me, that's all that means on a Friday. So
what it actually means is that I didn't plan it this way. It just worked out. Thank God it's finale.
Okay, fine. Close.
You know, it's close. But anyway, hey, man, just two quick things, and I'm going to let everybody go. First of all, how do I help you grow your business?
I mean, you're doing it. Just look, I believe transparency, exposure will help our industry thrive in the future. I'm a staunch supporter of that. I think the more that you can help get these talking points out to agents, it's beneficial to everyone, my business, but everyone in the industry. There are too many agents being led astray by talking points that just aren't true. And if we were to sit down and just logically think about it, this isn't that complex. Transparency always wins. So push that message as much as possible.
Absolutely. And last, and certainly not least, the hat coming your way. The hat's coming.
I love it.
I want to thank you so much. Next week, real excited. Want to talk about AI. Phil Stringer is going to be with us next week. Looking really forward. He's going to be his second time on the broadcast. Looking forward to that. And you know what? Again, everybody, thank you so much for for watching, whether it's now or later. And that's it, man. Just stay on as we go off, please. At the end. Thank you so much.